Yeah, good morning. Today is Wednesday, February 5th, 2025, and we're back at the House Transportation Committee. And today we're going to be talking about town highway program and town highway structures and I guess we're talking class 2 roads. And Chad Greenwood, welcome to the committee. And Ashley is over in the corner, and we are quick to hand it off. There is a presentation that goes with it, and we're looking to get up to speed on where we're at and what the budget is and what we do and how much we spend on it. So hand it all off, and good morning, and let's go.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Chad, do the committee, at least for my few years, I think. We like slides, we like pictures of work. Project pictures are awesome.
Okay. For the record, I'm Chad Greenwood, Transportation Maintenance Engineer. Along with me is Ashley Atkins, Deputy Director of Maintenance and Fleet. So I'm here to talk about the Town Highway Grant Programs, Structures Program. You're going to do.
I wonder if there's a way that it takes up the whole screen and so showing all your senior pieces, but I just like looking at the pictures, trying to figure out where they are.
One to keep going. Off to the right there, I think. Yeah, up. That's a slideshow. Yeah.
All right.
Is that better?
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, so back to Town Highway Grant Programs. Speak to the Structured Program, Class 2 Roadway Program, Non-Federal Disaster Program, and the Federal Disaster Program today. So this is a brief overview, or just a little portion out of the Orange Book. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's just more information for you guys to take a look at. So the Town Highway Structures Program is around 7.2 million is the statute. This is state grants for bridges, culverts, 36-inch diameter or larger, retaining walls on class 1, 2, and 3 highways. We tend to give grants around maximum of 200,000 per grant. The local match is 20% of the total cost, or 10% if town adopts the code and standards. The grant application process is coordinated through the district, V-Trans district personnel. As you can see, Structures program has been pretty consistent throughout the last 3 years with what we funded compared to what has been applied by all the towns. So
I didn't even ask you up in the beginning. You're okay with questions all the way through? I hope.
yeah, so I was just going to ask you, if you want to stop. So before I move on, just to start.
I'd like for the members to ask questions as we go.
Okay.
There's a lot of interest in the Town Highway and Structures Program, how it operates, what the demand is, what the need, and how it's funded, and what we may or may not be able to do about funding it going forward. I know that Representative Pouch has a question right up
Yeah,
there.
thanks. I'm very curious about this. Just a clarification on you have the chart there, the amount funded. Is that include the federal funding? And then the percent funded, is that the applications for grants you got and you were able to do 35% of them?
So this program is strictly state funded.
100%.
Yeah.
And then the percent funded on the chart, does that mean 35% of all the grants that were?
So for fiscal year 25, there was about 21.3 million applied grant from all the towns, and we funded 7.4.
Okay.
I will, if you want, I got it down below. There's a few more slides that get a little bit more. So this is a little bit more of a breakdown per district for the structures. I don't know if it's a little small. I apologize for that, but so for like district, as you can see, total we we funded 67 grants out of 103 that were applied over the statewide. And this has been pretty consistent throughout the last few years. So this is fiscal year 25. 24 is the same thing, 66 funded with 114 applied. And very similar numbers for 23. And this just shows the breakdown of each district, what they were allocated.
The town's application is for 1 year. Do they just roll it over if they didn't get it? Or is it new applications, or is it mostly if they didn't get it, they roll over the same application, waiting
So-
on their time in the queue? Or
So we want the towns to apply every year, as many as possible. But if they don't get it, it doesn't roll over, but they would be considered next year, but they might have to reapply.
they basically reapplying for the same?
Yes, and it's a
Project.
it's a very simple process, couple page.
Uh-huh. And it's likely the same project again. If they didn't get in if they didn't get into 7 million, those 14 million, you'll see them again next year. 14 million, that was the demand that wasn't funded.
I know the district PMs encourage the towns when they go sit with them, to apply for as much as they possibly, because, maybe a town, decide not to, we give them the grant and then they decide not to use it, so that money might open up. So that if there's a next grant in line, they would get it.
A couple questions. One, you mentioned that 20 and 10%. Do the majority of the towns, municipalities have the standards in place?
Yeah.
And what percentage of towns or?
I'm pretty confident it's like almost all of them, 99, 95% plus. They adopt it because it does affect their funding for FEMA as well in an emergency situation, so.
Yeah. Can you describe the criteria for selecting these and, which ones get chosen and which ones don't? And I'm wondering, particularly this year about climate change resiliency, upgrading culverts and all of that sort of thing rather than, so the criteria used to choose.
So the district PMs, they try to be equitable across the state. So the structures program is based on kind of a ratio with for the district one, the number of structures versus the overall structures in the state. That's kind of how the allocations come about based on the ratio. And then it's over time, right? So the towns kind of see where they're at, and we try to keep that distribution over time, equally. I don't know if that is enough.
Yeah,
They do the best they can to keep it equal, and
yeah.
obviously the towns with the more structures is probably going to have a better chance of getting a grant more often.
But they demonstrate a need for, like, it needs to be upgraded or it's failing, it's got a grade level or, what, you say, this is the one we're awarding and this one we're not this year. What's the criteria? And you're saying just sort of spread it out.
Yeah, and
on the municipalities.
yes, and like I said, it's a town with more structures will probably get a grant more often. Just,
Yeah.
and then I think the district PMs probably work with, they know all the towns of which, like you were saying on the criteria. Obviously, a town is in failure mode or something. Hopefully we could work that in. But there is another grant, another grant program that kind of, I'll speak to that a little bit later on the non-federal disaster.
PM, district PM.
Oh, sorry, the district project managers.
Okay. Representative Burke and then Representative Loud.
Yeah, I'm wondering, we did increase the maximum award few years ago. And given the increase in construction costs, like we've been 40%, do you think that that's an adequate number?
So this program is very hard to kind of analyze because every project is different. You might have a 36-inch culvert for one project, and then the next one's a 8x8 box culvert. So everything varies. Most of the time they're lump sum projects. So I can't just you can't really do an analysis, I guess, kind of per project base to show like inflation. It's very tough, to show that, but I guess I guess that's about all I can say as
Yeah,
far as
well,
this
the other
program.
thing to say, this year as projects come on, given the inflation, if there are going to be more problems with people, getting the funding that they need to do the projects.
I will say that we don't see a lot of increased cost amendments through this program. Which I think is good, and time extension, so I think that's showing that the program seems to be working, so, otherwise we think we'd get bombarded with time extension and increasing costs if needed, but.
Thank you.
Yeah, two questions. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to the standards that you are expecting towns to have adopted. And I imagine some of that coordinates with the general roads permit and other things, but that might be helpful for certainly for me to have a refresher, maybe my colleagues. And then the other thing is, can a town apply for more than one project in an application, or is it just very project specific?
I believe it's very project specific. They could do multiple, they could apply for multiple projects.
Okay.
But it would be one for each,
Got it. Okay, thank you.
each culvert or project, whatever you want. As far as I don't know the exact details of code and standard. I mean, it's some of it's very simple, like we might require an 18-inch culvert minimum size for certain aspects. I don't have a lot of, I'd have to get back to you on the actual details of the codes and standards.
Jim Casey, Hubbardton. I know in Hubbardton, they, a few years back, we went through and, after that big storm, we had like 4 inches of rain. I know other places had a lot more, but they had us upgrade all our culverts. And we went through and there was old culverts side of the road everywhere that they went through and picked up, and mostly went bigger. But I can't remember how we decided. Somebody helped us with deciding how big of a culvert might be needed for a 100-year storm. That's what they were going by.
So, I mean, we have people that can do hydraulic analysis on.
They may have come and helped us.
Yeah, so I'm
I can't
assuming that
remember
the district project
exactly.
managers probably got the information for the, from the town and pushed it forward to the hydraulic analysis. But I'm assuming that's the way.
I was just trying to
deciding.
put
Yeah,
out there. I remember we did that. And it was just
and that,
trying to help with
and
it.
that's part of the codes and standards.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, things for the record. To your question, the appendix A of the code and standards, that is the exact appendix A of the municipal roads general permit. And in that code and standards, municipality has an option to go with the non-hydraulically connected segments, or have those standards for all the roadway segments. So they choose which, based on category A, B, C, D, I believe it said, whether it's for all their roads or if it's only for the hydraulically connected segments that they adopt that code standards with. And they'll have things like, would we upsize the culverts to for a minimum drive culvert, a cross culvert? What does our base look like for amount of inches versus our top? So a lot of that information is in the code and standards. And then the municipality will, whenever they do a reconstruction or construction project, they bring that road up to those standards if it has been adopted.
Some of them, we had to put a couple of fish friendly culverts in.
Yeah, it was all on the natural bottom.
Yeah, and here's a part
The trout
with
water
the
thing.
district alterations engineer for those perennial
Right.
trees.
Yeah.
And we're asking a lot of questions because municipalities, I mean, this is where, so we had a lot of storms. I know in Heinsberg, we, lost 37 culverts. This really is separate from any emergency response, which I think you're gonna get into, right? Sort of, we've applied for these structure grants. But in the meantime, the storm came and took everything out. And now we've got, we're in the process of rebuilding or have rebuilt some. Does this link at all with some sort of disaster money, like for next year? Are some of those towns getting focused, or it's sort of separate? And go ahead.
It's separate. I would say, I guess I could speak a little bit, if, say you had a grant for a culvert replacement and it got washed out and FEMA or Federal Highway is gonna replace that, you could get, basically, we could try to find another grant for, if you had another culvert that wasn't
Yeah.
affected, say, we could probably use that grant to replace another pipe for you,
Okay,
for the town. I should
Yeah.
say.
thank you.
Move on.
Nice.
So this is the same, similar as, this is just right out of the orange book, a little bit more detail, just for your information. The class highway, town highway class 2 roadway program is about 8.6 million. Excuse me, this is basically grants that preserve the class 2 highways, resurface and reconstruction. Similar max award, $200,000. Similar as the local match is 30% of total cost or 20% if the town adopts the local codes and standards. Very similar numbers as far as it's a little lower than the structures, but you can see right around the 25% rate of what's funded compared to applied for.
Representative Corcoran.
Just a quick question. In our budget, we have carry forward and reversions, and one of the reversions was from this program for class 2, and $593,000 was reverted. And I'm looking at your numbers, and the demand was a lot greater than the money that we have, but yet we took $593,000. Why was that reverted from this program? And also structures had, a minuscule amount, they had 5,000, but the demand is up here, but yet we're taking away money. Can you speak to why close to $600,000 was taken out of this program?
I cannot speak to that.
That'd be a question for our CFO, and I have that down. Thank you.
Sorry.
Anybody else? How many miles do you think that, so this is all paving, right?
Paving or resurface and reconstruction would be smaller portions, but
How many miles is it? $9 million, $8.5 million? Brains. Any
boy.
idea what the miles?
So, I mean, I would say
I guess it varies.
it's all by tonnage for pavement, if we're running like $85 to $90 a ton for pavement, which a ton of pavement doesn't get you very far. I can say even at like an inch and a half thickness. I'd have to give you a while.
So, okay, that's all right. Don't worry about pulling.
Yeah, is it the same program category that also handles the striping on the roads? Is this, or is that a different part of the grants that does that?
Yeah, it's a different part of the state that takes care of the striping. Different program, I should say.
But we do stripe class 2 roadways on municipalities, class 1, class 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that might be where the link is. This is a class 2 roadway
Yeah.
grant program, but we do stripe class 2, and so
Okay.
it's similar based on the
So,
classification.
and I know you did the yellow line, but what about like if, you want to put like fog lines in or bike lane or that kind of stuff, is that something the municipality has to contract separately for?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Move on. So these are the numbers, if you want, similar as a class 2. You can see over fiscal year 25 funded $50 million, 55 to 149. Very similar. It's been pretty consistent. Both these programs have run pretty consistently the last 3 years after COVID.
Representative Howard?
So it's broken out by districts. The previous one was, but I'm guessing on the website, you can see which towns or municipalities received the grants. And that's easy to find on the website.
I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
So the next program is the Town Highway Non-Federal Disasters. This is basically a program that's used for emergency situations that don't qualify for assistance by FEMA or FHWA ER programs. The town's eligible for the greater 90% of the repairs or replacement costs, or the eligible repairs minus an amount of 10% of the overall total highway budget minus the town's winter maintenance budget. This has basically been funded around 1.15 million for the last few years. And it's basically been sufficient funds, I guess I would say. We average just about a million, a little bit more, using this program. It's basically for the towns, if something disaster comes about tomorrow, and it's just a low location that's just within that town, so.
Can you remind us the threshold? Isn't it like $1 million you need to get qualified? There's a certain amount of damage.
So not for this program, there.
Well, I know not for this because it doesn't reach that. I'm just saying, what's that bar?
So.
Or it doesn't, regardless, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter for this program.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you're referring to like FEMA, they have.
Yeah.
they have
There's a threshold, so like a $5 million damage and then.
Yeah, so it's county based,
Okay,
and then federal highway is around, the federal highway system's around 700,000
okay,
to meet, to get an ER event eligible.
okay.
So
I'm gonna just say, is this state money or fed?
It's the state money.
and the appropriation is listed at 1.15. What was the actual, do you have anything on the actual expenditure the last? How much did we actually give on this?
So fiscal year 24, we spent 1.9. Fiscal year 23, we're around 604,000. Fiscal year 22, we're around 615. And currently fiscal year 25, we're only at 108.
108,000 for 25?
To date, yes.
So year 25 ends, right?
What's that?
Yeah. It's on this year.
Right, it's already February. And a fair amount of disaster activity, a lot of activity with them, so.
Yeah, I mean, so both, so this,
We've been appropriating 1.1 and we spent 600.
and
And
one,
we did go over in 1.9. Was that using money that was was it rolled over from the previous year? That would be a question for Candace, I guess.
no, not to my knowledge, it's not rolled over. Well, I guess it had to been, right, because it's over, but there was one big project that kind of pushed that over, and I can't remember the actual town. I could find out from Candace where the money came from.
Representative
Yeah, thanks for all this information. So, and I'll go back to Heinsberg. I know, well, we got hammered last year and FEMA money is helping. So this wouldn't help at all with that. So, but you have a big rainstorm, something happens, it's not FEMA. And is it a grant you apply in the same way for the other programs? And then, do you have the numbers of, what you've appropriated and what the demand was?
I don't have that. I could find that.
That would be good to know, yeah.
It's very small numbers as far as how many people apply or how many towns actually apply for this emergency funds.
I have a question of Phil. So your town got FEMA money?
Yeah, we're in the process of getting
Yeah.
FEMA money, yeah.
So if you get FEMA money, are you not eligible for?
Then you're not eligible for this.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a,
Clarify that.
so I guess I understand, right? This is a fund available to the secretary as appropriately he decides where, or she decides where something happens to a town, but it doesn't rise to the level of FEMA. But we still, as a state, want to help that town from something that was beyond their.
I mean, I control a beaver dam,
That's
it takes out, dirt road or
That
something.
was one that I think we did last year.
Yeah.
Down south, the Beaver Dam took the roadway and culvert out, and
We're unclear of the application process, or it's more of it's a discretion decision. Is that? So not an application process, it's a discretion decision by the secretary.
You would apply and then,
There is an application, okay.
yes. And then actually at me kind of the delegation, I guess I would review. I would say like, say there was a culvert that all of a sudden just failed today. And it's been known that it was in rough condition for the last 10 years and the town didn't do anything about it. But then maybe that would throw up a red flag about giving a grant. It's very seldom that I turn any down.
Representative Allen?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is the beaver situation, our coexistence with beavers, is that becoming more of a challenge with roads, local roads, and are the I know in our town, we've used, beaver deceivers and things like that to try and manage a couple of our little hotspots. But is that part of, I'm sure they get training and the road foremen and stuff get training on all of this. I'm just kind of wondering, like, how much of a source of some of the challenges that we're facing is due to our wildlife, policies and encounters.
I really can't speak to that. I know we've done one that was considered that it was fault from a beaver. It wasn't a beaver dam. I mean, it was a beaver dam way up in the woods that came down through. But that's the only one that I've done in the last few years. So I can't speak much to that as percentages of animals. So I'll move on to this is the town highway federal disasters. This is a grant. So I guess as of currently I don't oversee this program, but I'm going to present the best of my knowledge and we'll have to regroup if needed. But basically this is a program that during a federal disaster, the emergency work, which is 100% federally funded for the first 270 days. This money is to help the towns fund that emergency work. And then the state will get reimbursed from federal highway. It's a pretty simple program. And feel free to ask questions. I mean, that's basically.
Representative?
Where is that picture?
I think this is possibly Stockbridge. I'm not 100% sure.
I just think it could be.
Big blowout.
Yeah.
Representative Couch?
Yeah, so this is a $4 million pot that can be used sort of to bridge before funding comes available, and then FEMA helps pay this back.
This is actually federal highway system only. So a federal aid system, I should say.
All right, so these are just for the state roads,
No, because there's town highways that are federally funded.
right?
So this would take care of any damage on a federally funded town highway,
Federal aid,
federal aid.
the major minor collectors, town highways.
I'm a little confused.
Certain sections of highway, if they're damaged, we have a pot of money set aside of state money to cover until federal money covers, or this is 4 million set aside to make the 8.92% state money.
So I should have eliminated that permanent work section. I talked to Candace and she said this is strictly for emergency funds for the first 270 days. That makes sense. So ignore the permanent work, that's a separate, I should not put that on here.
The road that qualifies washes out.
Yep.
This $4 million is our state money going in to help repair that road, or this is?
So this would be given to the towns. To basically pay for the cost to repair it, and then the state would have to wait and for the reimbursement from the federal.
And so it's like a little temporary loan.
Placeholder, I guess, I don't know what you want.
Okay, Heinsberg used some of this, I think, in the last year, because, we just had to get roads back open. And, so they're able to pay their contractors that they hired to quickly fix things. And then the state is the one who, works to get the federal money back to boost this back up.
Right, so we would be reimbursed, so it's really, I mean, it's basically, state's not actually, I mean, they got to front it, but we will.
Yeah. And this is, it makes sense to help the towns, because the towns don't have this cash floating around to fix roads, so they can use this money, and then that money goes back to the state as a cushion or
I will say it takes time to get money back to federal highways.
yeah. And, sorry, one last question. Is this always been enough? Did we have enough this last year
So I
for all the things?
so the last 2 years, so fiscally, let me just, I don't want to tell you something. Believe. So fiscal year 24, the actual costs were around 3.66 million. And Candace is expecting the fiscal year 25 will be, the actual cost will be very similar. So if there's no, she did say that if there's no ER event, which hopefully not, emergency event, this money would not be used.
So my question was,
You're all set.
I'm sorry, you
I just
can.
wanna make sure you're set. That's all. Thank you.
Is there a map, maybe on the Agency of Transportation website that show that where you can zero in by town and see what's a federal highway, what's a state highway, what's a class 2 road, et cetera?
Yes,
Yes.
it definitely maps would show federal aids. The
Okay.
federal aid system.
We had talked about having Jeremy Lee come in and do a little demo on the transparency or whatnot, so that's something that he
Yeah.
wants.
Yeah.
Fair to say? Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
We'll add that to our agenda items for next week.
Transparency, I like
Be
that.
transparency for Jeremy Reed, if he can give us, his 20 minutes or so at his next convenience, we'll slide him in. Heck, you can grab him if he's in the building now. If he's downstairs, there's a whole bunch of guys lined up from AOT to go into Senate Transportation this morning. That's why I came in a different door and I couldn't get past there. That's why. So, other questions. So, I did have just backing up a little bit. Chad, so your role is the town applications for these multiple programs in terms of town highway for structures, town highways for town highway, the highway piece, and whatnot. They all come in to you and your team and you decide how to award the funds. Is that what you're responsible for?
Right, so the district project managers deal with the town specifically. They go meet with them annually and go over all the processes and all that, and then all the information goes to them. But I guess I would help if the district project managers take care of their district. I stay out of it. I kind of oversee the overview of the program, but the district PMs pretty much make most of the decisions on the grants.
And do they get together and decide who's getting what for money? Who decides which ones are
So
funded?
there's a
Team meeting thing, or wait, I'm sorry.
No, so basically, in the program, myself and a counterpart, we get the allotments and so each district gets an allotment for class 1 and then another allotment for the structures grant. And that's basically figured on the structures of the ratio type thing, like I mentioned, and the other one's class 2 mileage.
So. Really, everybody only wants to do public math, right? So. If you add the 3 programs up, there's $17 million in the budget to give to town highways, structures, and this potential disaster money that's budgeted at 1.2. And we paid out 4 million on the last piece. Anyway, so the demand is, let's just take the top 2. If you just go with 15.8 million is what we've expended the last couple of years in general. But the demand is $57 million in applications from the towns, and we're expending 15.8, so 16 million out of 57 million year by year. that's one of the things that was talked about in the committee. It's not necessarily a question for you, but it's a question and part of the committee discussion of what we sort of talked about on as we went through the T-bill, and then we have sort of the idea of how we're going to long-term fund transportation and where are we going to find, are we or are we not going to find a way to help the towns? And what this presentation demonstrates to me is there's $57 million in ask from our towns and municipalities on work that they need done on culverts and paving. And we're able to, in the way the budget is structured now, we're only able to award $16 million out of 57 or 61 million, depending on how much you add in the demand, 57 million in work. So what I hear out there about the frustration is sort of just have to wait your turn in the queue once every X number of years that you're going to get a project. And if that amount of disasters and amount of issues that happen to Plainfield and Barry and Heinsberg and other places, 16 million against a $57 million ask doesn't put them in a spot to close that gap very quickly. I guess I would also say is I don't know that the demand and the increase for expenses that you haven't seen for an increase in costs and whatnot. I have a hard time believing that the costs from contractors, and maybe it's because of the cost of the road crews are doing most of the work. I don't know if the road crews are doing it or if they're hiring it out, but I can't imagine that the expense that we heard testimony here about the huge increase in construction costs hasn't also hit the town projects unless they're doing it with their own road crews in some way. I don't know if anybody has comment on that. How do they manage to keep the cost not hitting them? But our expenditure of 16 million against 58 million, $61 million in demand is tough for our towns. I hear frustration in some of that. So those are my piece when I talk about we have these two other things that we'd like to do something about. This is the numbers that I'm hearing when we're looking at that. So and your group awards those pieces, they manage those projects. I suppose there's never ever an ending list. There's always, by the time we get through the list, we're back to where we were on the previous projects and whatnot where we are. So I think this purpose of this is to illustrate what we think part of that demand is. That is without really understanding the impact of emergency.
Yeah, it's just sort of, again, I'm gonna go with Heinsberg's experience and talking to our town administrator, he said, well, we've applied for these highway grants. And he said, you're only gonna get them once in a while. You're not gonna get them every year. And up until just a few years ago, there were things that were wearing down or we're rebuilding a road and we're gonna upgrade some culverts. But now Heinsberg has had the RPC come through and help them size culverts what they should be. And, they want to proactively go out and do this. And I think, and it would be good to maybe, get some testimony from town administrator like the one in Heinsberg, just sort of describing this desire to upgrade for resiliency, but, not really having town money to do it. And these grants, while they help, and we're not saying no to any of them, aren't really sized to allow municipalities to sort of get their infrastructure to where it needs to be now in a new reality. In the same way, the state is looking at all their culverts and they're actively doing that. They're identifying problem areas and getting it done. And I think municipalities are just, behind the eight ball and trying to do the same thing. And I think our town was looking at this and trying to do this. And in the last storm, just there you go. So now it's costing that much more. And it's all done in an emergency thing. So they had to patch up a bunch of roads. We have a couple of structures that are gone. Well, one that's totally gone. It's going to be over $1 million. And, I don't know how we would ever fix it. So, and we're, I think, waiting for FEMA money too. So a piece of that is FEMA money. But we'll see, when it all sugars out in the next year or so, how we make out. But I think there was frustration in that. I think the road crew and our road department knew of problem areas and was hoping to get them fixed, but they got, it was too late, I guess.
It is Jim Casey Hubbard, it is kind of ironic that the funding kind of stays the same and I'm just echo, it is kind of like we've been listening to some big numbers, we're watching them increase, we're seeing graphs that go up, it is you guys be able to kind of keep it in one even keel or as far as funding goes, but that would be nice if we could catch up. That'd be kind of nice. I know I drove over like Bethel Mountain Road and Brandon Gap's not too bad, but Bethel Mountain Road, it's like my teeth aren't loose, but it's certainly around my job pretty good coming over there. I'm sure it's not gonna get any better. I see places that could definitely use. It would be nice if we could definitely kind of catch up on some of this stuff, but I know it's gonna be the Northeast is rough on pavement for sure, but the funding doesn't seem the same. Seems it's definitely noticeable. I'm glad you brought that up.
My concern is that
Trumped
we
on it.
heard the testimony regarding bridges, and we heard from the director of highway that the engineer that our bridge condition is actually in really great shape. And the reason that we got there is because we had a number of events and a huge amount of FEMA projects that we reused to fix the bridges. I don't think it's a really strong long-term strategy and I'm not suggesting that's the agency's strategy, but waiting for things to have a big event so that we can get FEMA done and work it's amazing the work we do in that first 270 days. It is incredible how fast we can move everything when we suspend all the rules and make direct cuts from the quarry right onto the interstate. And it's amazing what we can do. But that's what I'm concerned about is our strategy is to wait until after the disaster to then rebuild as much as we can in that 270 days. Now that is a strategy. I don't think it's the officially endorsed, but when we're knowingly coming up in gaps that are that substantial, are we going to find a way to proactively change it? And where are we going to fit that within our committee structure and our long term? We're dealing with a budget for 1 year and we're talking about a problem that is more systemic than that. And I was joking about my trip through the building while I spent 40 minutes in appropriations talking to multiple members that I don't know or trying to learn to know and start to explain what we're up against here. So that's why the structure of the town highways and municipalities is important to us. If you haven't been hit yet, are you going to? And if you have been hit and you're in Plainfield and we don't have anybody from that area and whatnot, but I would imagine they're in a similar position as Heinsberg, as Barry is, as other people are. And we all represent individual municipalities and towns. And this is why I'm sort of trying to set the stage for longer discussions that talk about what we think the priorities and roads and bridges and transportation and how we get places, no matter what the mode, is sort of, in my view, a core function of the state government. Representative Burt?
I was just going to add to that. I mean, it gets into the allocation between state and towns to town programs versus state, and which is, been an ongoing conflict about where the money goes.
I'm not good at math either, and I would say that the difference between 6.6 to 7.4 to 7.4 is a pretty small increase and probably looks somewhere like that graph of 1% that we see in incoming state transportation revenues. And what I'm looking to do with the committee discussions and with these presentations is we have to figure out what we think we want to do, and we have to go out to the committee next door and the committee in the basement and say, we've got a pretty substantial problem. We're going to need your long-term help, even though it's not the number one or number two priority in the building this year. That's what I'm trying to first convince us what that is and then where we're going, and then the rest of the building in terms of what we're going to do about that. Yes, please, Representative Allen.
Oh, yeah, just sort of two gut reactions to what you're saying. I agree. One is, we did take over, the legislature took over regulation of river corridors last year, which was, I think every single person in this building voted for that just because of the challenges that municipalities are facing. So there may be some kind of cross-pollination opportunities with that to like work to common purpose on some of these infrastructure situations. And then, the other concern is that when these disasters happen and particularly within our historic cores, the impacts are, there's a multiplier of impacts, it takes out people's homes and businesses, right? And other public buildings and assets, town offices, things like that. Johnson is the poster child for some of the terrible things that happened. Unfortunately, just one of many. So this is a significant problem, and I'm not sure how we prioritize things, but that might be a way to start to, if we have limited resources, to try and prioritize the places where we are trying to encourage, focus housing and other development. So just throwing that out there as idea.
And a last sort of question on the same topic. Heinsberg's got an advantage over other small towns in that we're tied with our CCRPC. So they've helped us look at culverts and sizing and all that. So they've helped us come up with that priority. And I think, our town folks know how to apply for these grants. I think they're probably pretty good at it. And I just wonder whether the program managers are going to maybe smaller towns without those resources and how much they're helping, because we hear that a lot with very small rural towns. They, getting grants, these are all grants. You've got to write it up. You got to know what you're saying and know how to sell it, I guess, too, at the same time. So how much help are you able to provide to all towns so they all get an equal amount? And again, looking at the prioritization of it, how much now has come into climate resiliency? How much of that, or is it just the conditions that provides the priority of who will get it this year or not?
So the district personnel are more than willing to support, provide technical services to all the towns. They meet with all the towns annually. I think they have a pretty good base with all the towns. So I think it's just a matter of the town staying in good communication with the district's project managers, and they're more than willing to help. They do a lot for the towns there.
And the criteria, so now you've got, on average, say 4 applications and you provide it for one. Is what gets that criteria up? Is it just a condition, or it's been a while since that town's gotten the grant? I mean, what's that process look like?
I mean, I think it's kind of like the overtime for each small town, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's sort of what my town administrator's saying. It's like, you get in line and you at
I
some
think the
point.
towns kind of know when their time is up, right, or time to get a grant.
So I know Heinsberg very well because I was District 5, Chittenden County
Okay, yeah.
project manager. So
Yeah,
when Mike Anthony was town foreman, I was
Yes.
with Mike quite a bit, go out on the roads with him, look at him, help him write up that grant application. As Chad was saying, district project managers meet with their towns like 60 days after the town budget's passed, to help them create that annual financial plan, help them apply for grants if needed. Any kind of hydraulic assistance that they need for sizing up culverts. So there's a lot of communication that goes. I know we sit in on CCRPC's TAC meeting, that Tuesday of every month. So there's a lot of communication that happens with the towns. And back to your question about the queue. And so we have this application management system that we utilize for our grants for town highway or class 2 infrastructures. And so it prints out these great reports, which you saw the reports that Chad had on there, but we also have reports that the project managers utilize for setting up of that queue. that Q is for structures, is total funding that municipality received over total funding that has been awarded through that or allocated through that district for structures. For class two, it's a total funding that municipality has received over class 2 miles. So they're both ratios that then are queued up least to greatest, and that's how we distribute funds equitable. So that 5 to 7 year kind of average for class 2 is, which we don't typically like to use that average, but just for a ballpark kind of figure, that's about the rotation that they're seeing with those two programs based on that queue. And so we always encourage towns to apply, like Chad said, just in case a town says, you know, we thought we were shovel ready for the project. We know we have 30 months, but we've decided to go elsewhere with this, so we're withdrawing this application, and there's that next one. Or you might be, 11th in queue, but on average, we allocate maybe 7 for that district. But if 4 ahead of you don't decide not to apply for any kind of grant, then you can still receive a grant. So we always encourage towns to apply because of those different factors. But I think that gets to your question as far as like, what is that queue and what does that look like for that rotation?
So a big part of it, and we're not criticizing at all, but it's extremely helpful for municipalities. But a big part of the prioritization or the criteria is like if your town hasn't gotten them, then you kind of move up and then you look at them closer and okay. So thanks. Yeah. I guess my point just being is now in the last few years, we're seeing climate, storms like and I'm not sure the towns are able to respond fast enough. So, thank you.
Been lost in all these questions. I don't know if we discussed this or not, but what triggers the federal disaster for the town highways? What, again, is that a threshold? Like what,
Yes,
how do we get to be a town high federal disaster?
so for FHWA, we gotta meet a $700,000
So it's still
statewide.
700,000.
Yes, statewide. FEMA is a little different.
Sure, so this is like almost like we're putting a Band-Aid on it until, you have 207 days, so the clock ticks, so is there things that we can speed up that process as far as town and getting work out there, as far as bidding and, all the environmental permits and stuff like that? Or we still gotta go through those loopholes to get this, work done, because 270 days is pretty quick, so
Yeah.
is it more of like a Band-Aid and then we come back and reprogram it and then it goes in different,
Right, I mean, the district personnel help
Yeah.
is on that stuff as well,
Yeah.
but yeah, the emergency work is get roads open.
Yeah.
As quick as possible. Hopefully you can call that emergency work permanent work and, get 100% reimbursed,
Yeah.
but some of these larger culverts, obviously it takes time for the actual permitting, which federal highway requires for. So you'd have to go the permanent project route, but I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's, it's just obviously that the 100% federal is, it's huge.
Yeah, right.
And we never really gone over 4 million you don't have a chart, but just the last 4 or 5 years. That's sufficient for 4 million.
Like I said, yeah.
It's hard to predict.
Yeah, I talked to
Yeah,
CFO,
just-
she thought that would be
Yeah.
sufficient if we have another event. I mean, the
Yeah.
last 2 seasons or years have been pretty
Yeah.
good size events, so.
Anybody else have any other pieces?
What caused the zero funding in 21? Was there one mitigating factor? COVID kicked that off there. Okay.
That was before me, but I'm pretty sure.
But they made it up, I see, the very next
Doubled it up the
year.
next
They
year.
doubled it, yes. Actually, it might say it on that top of that. No funding, it just doesn't say. It was COVID.
Yeah, I guess that was the obvious answer.
Everything's there. That's the answer.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Did you want to go, Representative Allen?
Yeah, I just had a question. So let's say, something happens that is, like this image here, with the bridge going, or a culvert that needs to be significantly upsized. And so in fixing that, there is an opportunity to expand, maybe expand the roadway a little bit within the right of way. Is that allowed with is the funding that the municipality receives, would that be allowed to kind of set the stage for maybe having a future sidewalk or bike lane there at some point, like creating the capacity for that? Or are we thinking about trying to, tick off a couple of different goals at the same time, like seeing this as an opportunity to, make an enhancement in this community, so that we're not in a situation where then after the fact, we've got to somehow figure out how to, we've got a piece of infrastructure that doesn't accommodate a sidewalk or a facility. And, are we sort of thinking ahead that way?
So I can't really speak to the FEMA side of things. Federal Highway, I know they're looking for resiliency. They want you to upsize, structures to hopefully avoid damage in the future. As far as adding like additional width for sidewalks, I mean, maybe within the right of way would be okay, but obviously you'd have to say everything's got to be within the right of way, or you have to go a permit project, which would all proper clearances would have to go through then.
I think it expands on it a little bit in our orange book, which is those first slides where it took out that chunk. And so like curbing is an eligible cost and it's there for, stormwater infrastructure.
Did you say it's ineligible or?
It is eligible.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of times we have, there might be this larger structure that we have a great example of it in Wilson, South Burlington. They share this structure. It's very, very large structure. They utilize the structures program for engineering and then also another grant for construction. Both towns did because they're both ready for that queue. And then they also worked with Joel Perigo's group for the bike and pedestrian program, and we're able to get the sidewalk reimbursed for that project for them. We're able to work with us in the district for the engineering and for the structure replacement of that 200,000. So it was one project, multiple facets, multiple programs. Or granting mechanisms to be able to fund that project. And so we try to work in unison as much as we possibly can to have a better project at the end of it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. All right, we have any other questions? Chad, Angela, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. Appreciate the piece. We'll be back in touch. We have a few more questions and we'll adjust the schedule. I think I mentioned we had a few illnesses